Walk through an American neighborhood built before 1950, and the houses carry a different weight. Dark red brick, thick walls, small windows set deep into the structure. They do not just look old, they look serious, as if generations were expected to pass through them. Now drive through a suburb built after 1980. The homes may be larger and brighter, but many feel lighter. Wood frames, vinyl siding, factory-made panels, surfaces installed quickly and replaced just as quickly. Something changed, and most people never noticed it happening. Why did a country that once built homes out of brick start building houses that feel faster, lighter, and more temporary? To understand why, we have to go back to a time when brick was not a luxury. It was normal. Let's get into it right here on Secrets of Simple Things. When brick was just how you built. Before World War II, brick was not reserved for mansions. In cities like Chicago, Baltimore, and Philadelphia, it was the ordinary material of working-class neighborhoods. Factory workers, immigrants, and modest families lived behind brick walls because that was simply how many homes were built. But these were not the thin brick surfaces many people see today. They were real structural brick houses. The brick was not a decorative skin. It was the house itself. The walls were thick, heavy, and load-bearing. They carried the floors and roof, then pushed that weight into the ground. Remove the brick, and you would not just remove the look. You would remove the structure. That is the quiet power of something as simple as a brick. One brick is ordinary. Thousands of bricks placed by skilled hands can become a system strong enough to survive for generations. Those homes carried a deeper message. This place should outlast me. But Permanence has one weakness. It takes time. And after World War II, America suddenly did not have time. The housing emergency that changed everything. When the war ended, around 12 million American soldiers came home. Many wanted to marry, start families, find work, and begin the stable life they had imagined while they were away. But America did not have enough houses. The federal government estimated a shortage of about 5 million homes. Cities were crowded, families were doubled up, young couples were waiting for a place to begin. There was no secret meeting where someone decided America should abandon brick. Brick did not suddenly become weak, ugly, or outdated. It simply belonged to a slower world, and the post-war world was moving fast. In a housing emergency, the strongest material does not always win. The material that wins is the one that can be built quickly, cheaply, and repeatedly, thousands of times. America needed millions of houses, quickly. And this is where one builder looked at a house and stopped seeing it as a craft project. He saw it as a product. The man who turned houses into an assembly line. His name was William Levitt. In 1947, on 4,000 acres of former potato fields on Long Island, Levitt began building Levittown. But the revolution was not just where he built. It was how he built. Levitt borrowed a lesson from Henry Ford. Instead of treating each house as a separate project, he divided home building into 26 repeatable steps. One crew poured slabs, another framed walls, another installed wiring, another handled plumbing. Each team did one job, then moved to the next house. The neighborhood became a moving assembly line. At peak production, Levitt's operation could finish around 10 to 12 houses a day. A home had become something closer to a mass-produced product. A 4-room house could sell for about $6,999. For veterans, government-backed mortgages could mean no money down. Young couples even camped outside for the chance to buy one. They offered a yard, a driveway, and space to begin again. Levitt was solving a real problem, but in solving it, he changed the rules. He did not defeat brick with an argument. He defeated brick with speed. And brick had a problem. It could not move at the speed of an assembly line. Why brick could not race? Brick is simple, but building with brick is not fast. Every wall rises one unit at a time. A mason places a brick, spreads mortar, checks the line, keeps the wall level, and repeats. Strength depends on spacing, joints, pattern, and how weight is distributed. Wood framing was different. Lumber could be cut to standard sizes, delivered in bulk, lifted into place, nailed together, and divided across crews. It was lighter, more flexible, easier to schedule, and easier to finance. Wood frame houses had real advantages: speed, cost, flexibility, and practicality. But once they became the national model, something deeper changed. Brick belonged to the world of masons. Wood framing belonged to the world of schedules, crews, loans, and mass production. Brick did not lose because it was weak. It lost because it was slow. But Levitt was not only selling a cheaper structure, he was selling a new image of American life. The suburban dream needed a new skin. The new suburban house felt different because of what it promised. For many families, the old brick city house carried the memory of crowded streets, narrow rooms, factories, shared walls, and dense urban life. It was strong, but it belonged to a world many people wanted to leave behind. The new suburb offered a different picture: a house on its own land, a lawn, a backyard, a driveway, a car outside, light through the windows, space between neighbors. After years of war, this felt like a rival. In that story, brick began to look like the past. Wood-frame suburbia began to look like the future. Once that image became powerful, the industry followed. Builders copied the model. Buyers expected speed. Banks financed repeatable designs. Demand for masons declined. Apprenticeship programs weakened. Local brickmakers lost the market that had supported them. The change was no longer just architectural, it became cultural. And then, as brick lost its place as the structure, another material arrived to take over the surface. Vinyl siding finished the job. Then came vinyl siding. Crane Plastics introduced vinyl panels in 1958. Early versions cracked and faded. But vinyl did not need to be perfect at the beginning. It only needed to keep improving. By the 1970s and 1980s, builders could hardly ignore it. Vinyl did not need regular painting. It did not rot the way exposed wood could. It came in standard panels and could be installed quickly. For a builder, this was almost ideal. A home could be wrapped fast, looked clean, cost less, and sounded comforting. Low maintenance, modern, practical. Vinyl did not have to be more beautiful than brick. It only had to be cheaper, faster, and easier to live with in a market built around speed. By around 2000, vinyl was installed on nearly 40% of new American homes. Brick had fallen to about 20%. But this created one strange illusion. Many houses still looked like brick, even when brick was no longer doing the work. The brick costume. Here is the detail that changes how you look at many modern suburbs. A house can look like brick without truly being a brick house. In many newer homes, the structure is still wood frame. The brick outside is often only a thin outer layer, sometimes about an inch thick, called brick veneer. It gives the wall the appearance of masonry, but it is not carrying the main weight. The floors, roof, and walls are held by the frame behind it. The brick is no longer the house. It is the outfit the house is wearing. Remove the brick veneer from a modern wood frame house and the building would still stand. Remove the brick from an old structural brick house, and you would be taking away the bones. And that difference matters, because a house is judged not only by how it looks when new, but by what happens after decades of rain, heat, moisture, and repair. The hidden cost of building fast. A structural brick house properly built and cared for can remain useful for a very long time. Some can last 300 years. In Baltimore or Philadelphia, brick homes still stand after more than a century and a half. That does not mean every old brick house is perfect or every wood frame house is weak. A wood frame home can last 50 to 100 years or longer if it is well designed, well built, and kept dry. But that last part is crucial: kept dry. Moisture is one of the great enemies of wood construction. If water gets behind siding, around a window, or into a wall cavity, the damage may stay hidden. From the street, the house can still look clean. Behind the surface, the frame can slowly rot. In places like Pennsylvania, major builders have faced costly lawsuits over newer homes damaged behind clean-looking facades. This is the hidden cost of systems built around speed, cost, and appearance. The visible parts are easy to sell. The invisible parts, durability, skilled labor, long-term repairability, are easier to ignore. We did not just change materials, we change the time horizon of a house. So the story of brick is not really about brick, it is about what a society chooses when it has to decide between building for now and building for later. Speed 1. Permanence stayed behind. America did not stop building brick houses because brick stopped working. Brick is still durable, still standing quietly in old neighborhoods, still doing what it was built to do. But after World War II, the country needed houses fast. Millions of families needed a place to begin again. Builders like Levitt made homes cheaper, quicker, and easier to repeat. In that moment, the choice made sense. The problem is what happened after the emergency passed. A solution created for speed became the default model. A home that once carried the idea of generations was replaced by one optimized for schedules, financing, quick construction, and a fresh exterior on closing day. That is why old brick houses feel different. They come from a time when a house was not only a product, it was a promise. Maybe the real question is not why America stopped building brick houses. Maybe it is why we became comfortable living in a world where even homes are expected to expire. If stories like this make you look at ordinary things differently, subscribe to Secrets of Simple Things. We explore the hidden history, design, and trade-offs behind the everyday world, from the walls around us to the objects we barely notice but live with every single day.